for those that are familiar with, like, so we're going to talk about 2 cleanses tonight: the Core Restore Kit from Orthomolecular, and then Standard Process. Standard Process, they reformulated theirs a few times over the years. So I'm trying to think back, probably 3-4 years ago, this used to be much more complex, and they've simplified it. So we'll go through that tonight, and it tastes a lot better. About 2 years ago, in the supplement industry, or thereabouts. Well, I can only speak for the companies I'm dealing with mostly, which is Standard Process and Ortho. They went through a lot of their powders and reflavored pretty much all of their powders. They just were never really that great, so they spent a lot of time and obviously money working with people in the food industry to get these cleanses actually tasting somewhat palatable, so that obviously patients would take them and there'd be better compliance and so forth. So I've tried them all, I've tasted them all. I don't necessarily have a favorite. I think they all do a really good job. So we'll kind of get through that as I go through the info. So I'm probably, since there are some few people online, yeah, there's 3 people. I've got about 20 minutes of material, and then I'll just open it up for questions. And there's really not a lot. And then really stop me at any time, or if something doesn't make sense. I mean, the whole goal is for you to be comfortable with this material, so that, like, are you ready for a cleanse? We'll kind of talk about that tonight too. I want to make sure that your patients are knowing what they're getting into, and then if they run into any roadblocks, they know how to figure that out too. So, all right, so I'll just kind of walk through some of this information. A lot of these slides will hopefully just generate some discussion, and we'll just go from there. So whole body detoxification, that's the other thing too. When I first started doing detox cleanses, even 20 years ago, it was all about fiber and laxatives, and we've come a long way from that, of looking at liver enzymes and what's phase 1 detoxification, what's phase 2 detoxification. So what do those words even mean? So we'll kind of work through all that. So see if does my pointer work? Oh no, I might have to do this by hand. So my medical disclaimer just is more for a formality for YouTube, because people might watch this later on. But if you're on any medications, I don't want you to stop them. Talk to me, go through that, see if there's anything that we need to be careful of. So that's what all this says. So even though it's an over-the-counter supplement, oh no, come on in. You didn't miss much. Yep. So yeah, where we're going for tonight, where do toxins come from? I think we can generally come up with our own list of this, but just so we're all on the same page, I'll just touch on that for a few moments. And then how does a detox cleanse benefit our health? We'll touch on briefly the pathways for liver detoxification, which is not like a biochemistry class by any means, but I think it's important to have some background information of, why these cleanses versus another cleanse that might be half this price and things like that. I mean, because your average price for a cleanse, either way you go, is around $100. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world to go through a detox cleanse. So you want to know what you're getting. So we'll go through some of those nutrients and so forth. What sets this apart from something that's, you might find online or something else. And then how to prepare your body for metabolic detoxification. That's important too, because if you do a detox cleanse and you literally just go home tonight and tomorrow morning you start whipping up these shakes, you might feel miserable in a day or two. And I don't want any patient to obviously feel that way. So there's some certain things we want to set up so that we have success during the cleanse. I could personally speak from experience. I thought, I'm healthy. I eat organic food or this and that. And I'm just going to go and jump in and do the cleanse. And the first time I did a cleanse, I didn't lose any weight. I didn't feel any better afterwards. I didn't follow the diet. I kept drinking my coffee and things like that. So I know. So I know. We'll get into coffee. The 2 topics that always come up during cleanses is coffee, which I'm still drinking right now, and it's 6:30 at night. I still have work to do after this class tonight, and then alcohol. So I'll kind of talk about those 2 topics a little bit in detail. Because if we're going to be consuming those products, we're not going to get the best cleanse that we could. So we'll get to that. The program options, again, we're going to talk about Standard Process. Their SP Detox is what they call their program, and then Orthomolecular's Core Restore. And we'll just kind of compare and contrast those two programs, see which one might be better for each particular patient. And then just different tools to help with success. Before I forget, like each kit has a booklet, and pretty much everything I'm going to be presenting tonight is in these booklets, and a lot more information. There's all kinds of recipes with both kits. I will say, patients have asked me over the years, do I have to follow the recipes in the kit? And the answer is no. As long as you look at the general guidelines for the kits, again, regardless of which one you get, there's a list of do's and don'ts. Just make sure you're not consuming the foods that are on the don't list, of course. And if you got healthy recipes with organic foods, go for it. So just real briefly on toxin exposures. We could probably spend a whole hour talking about the toxins, I'm sure. There's a lot of statistics out there, but I found this one interesting. The average person is exposed to 14 pounds of pesticides, herbicides, food additives, and food preservatives each year. That's just frightening to me, that all that material is getting into our body. And a lot of times, I usually get ahead of my slides, so sorry for that. But what ends up happening is those toxins are fat soluble, and then they'll hide in our fat tissue. And that's usually the hardest weight to lose. Like we might go on a diet and lose a bunch of weight, but it's usually those last 5 to 10 pounds or so that's the hardest to lose, is because our body uses our fat stores as a buffer system to keep those toxins from causing harm to our body. So we ideally want to do a cleanse to get rid of the toxins, and then the weight goes with it, which is, a lot of times, not that, I'm promoting these as a weight loss program by any means, but it's one of the positive side effects of the cleanse. Gets rid of all this unnecessary, in my book, material that's accumulating. And again, this slide is nothing new. We know that toxins are in the water, air we breathe, again, preservatives and additives in foods, household cleaners, of course, cigarette smoke is on there, dyes and paints, personal care products. We used to do a class just on personal care products here. We can spend a whole day talking about all of the unnecessary materials that are in personal care products. Heavy metal exposures, pesticides, herbicides. So they're everywhere. The big thing that I like to point out on the slide, though, is with water. Like some things we can control, some things we can't. I highly recommend getting some type of reverse osmosis system in your house, just so you have a nice clean water source, or obviously Brita filters or something like that. That's I think in my book hugely important to make sure we're getting clean water, at least trying to flush out the stuff that we can't necessarily control coming into our body. The dirty dozen. So when we get into some of these recipes, it's expensive to buy organic food, especially for, your family too. Family of 6, you got all these mouths to feed at home. You could be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars every week on organic blueberries and blackberries and everything else under the sun, and grass-raised meat and so on and so forth. We gotta, we each have our budgets, and we have to understand, okay, where can I maybe not get the organic fruit or vegetable? So I like to use this at the dirty dozen as, okay, if you're going to go out and get organic whole foods, try to get these fruits and vegetables as organic. Other ones, if they're not on this list and not as important, I mean, if you can, great. But like blueberries, I love eating blueberries. That's one of my superfoods in my book. I try to get organic blueberries as much as I can. So, and again, this is all I've zoomed in enough, so if you don't have to, write down everything on the slides, you can always go back and just pause it, or I think Kelly has your emails. If you want, I can just email the slide deck to everyone.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so you can just kind of soak in the information tonight. So yeah, why all the hype on this? Every year we kind of try to get patients to do a cleanse or a detox cleanse, because it does lead to a lot of unfortunate diseases and conditions like that. So this is obviously not an all-inclusive list, but food cravings and weight gain can be related to toxic exposure. Reduced mental clarity, fatigue, sleeping difficulties, skin issues, low libido, joint pain and inflammation, digestive issues, and the list goes on and on. So I think almost everyone can be probably included in that list. Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. I can probably check out most of those boxes myself. So, and here's another nice list. So, signs that your detoxification capacity might be impaired. So, how do I know if my liver is working the way that it should? You can't necessarily, yeah, liver enzymes are typically in the normal range and so forth. So, there's other indicators that we have to kind of just tune into and be more self-aware of our health. So, digestive elimination problems. So, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, nausea, heartburn, elevated cholesterol. Some of these seem intuitive. Some are, might be a little bit not. Elevated cholesterol, who would think that might be related to heavy metal toxicity or something like that. Being either overweight or underweight. I was thinking about this as I was going through this slide, and being underweight. We have so many patients nowadays, at least at this pharmacy we do, that have autoimmune disease, and they're allergic to everything under the sun. It seems like. And a lot of them are very malnourished, and they're very frail. We're seeing more and more of that, and it is partly due to all of these toxins that are accumulating in their body, even though they're skinnier than a rail and they're very frail. But that those toxins can still accumulate in a person like that, and just creates this autoimmune condition I keep seeing over and over. So if you know anyone like that, they might say, you might want to, either do a cleanse, or you can, do some of these heavy metal tests and things like that to try to uncover what's going on in the background. Allergies, skin disorders. We talked about fatigue already. Anger, depression, irritability. So even our mood can be changed by toxins that are building up in our body. The dark circles under our eyes, that's a classic sign. I always tell patients, if you see that, the two things, they're not sleeping all that well, and there's liver congestion. Anytime I see that on a patient, I recommend a detox cleanse. Blood sugar and hormonal imbalances, that's huge. We see a lot of that here. PMS, asthma, frequent colds, flus, sinus infections. So if your liver is congested and your body's full of toxins, the immune system is going to be weakened because of that. So we got to keep that in mind too. If somebody's getting sick all the time, it'd be a good idea to clean out their liver, ideally. Muscle and joint pain, fibro, insomnia, we talked about that. Here's that chemical sensitivity again, or like autoimmune disease, and their immune system is just hypervigilant and just reacting to everything under the sun. I'm always recommending those patients do a cleanse, among many other things, but we want to try to get their liver at optimal peak function. Internal toxins are also a problem. So I thought this list was interesting as well too. So I mean, you look at bacterial infections or chronic. We deal with a lot of patients here that have chronic yeast infections, and we're trying to put them on candida cleanses and so forth. So we got to be aware that I have patients that are coming in, especially this past year, with antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on with your microbiome? For one, is probably completely destroyed. They most likely need a strong probiotic to restore their GI tract. But then again, get a cleanse in there to help their liver get back to normal functioning capacity can be really important. Undigested food, byproducts of metabolic reactions, so carbon dioxide, ammonia, hormones. We see a lot of the patients that are getting hormone therapy here. I mean, I probably fill 80 prescriptions a day for estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, so on and so forth, for men and women. And what happens is, over time, their symptoms will come back after about 2 or 3 months. I'll put them on a multivitamin, some B vitamins, magnesium, and things like that. And then all of a sudden their symptoms get better again. So that they might first off think, or even the doctor might think, oh, I need to get my dosages changed. My hot flashes are back, or something to that nature. My symptoms are back. And I'll, do some questioning with the patient and realize they're not on any type of supplementation for a multivitamin or anything like that. They're just taking their hormone therapy, and we'll put them on a good vitamin that has the B's, the magnesium, things like that. That's going to help with hormone balancing and detox, and helping these hormones get metabolized out of the body. And you can see their hormone symptoms improve just by simple B vitamin sometimes. Undigested food, stress, even just like, yeah, unresolved trauma, abuse, unhappy relationships. So things like that, you would think from a situational standpoint, that creates a chemical imbalance in the body. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, all the adrenaline hormones, cortisol that builds up in our body. Where are those neurotransmitters and hormones going? What are the byproducts doing in the body? They're not doing the body good. That's for sure. It helps us deal with the situation potentially, but from an internal standpoint, there's consequences for that on a metabolic level. All right, so toxins are fat soluble. That's one thing we want to remember. And then the other thing is also, if there's one thing you want to remember tonight, it's kind of a joke here, of course, but you are what you don't excrete. So I always think about you are what you eat, but if you're not getting rid of the crap and literally going to the bathroom, that's becoming part of you too. So we got to make sure that we're going to the bathroom every day, of course. So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Roles of the liver. So I've mentioned this a little bit, but just so we have an understanding of this too, because of course the liver, there's many different functions. I think of the liver as just that processing center to metabolize everything that's going through in our body. But it filters our blood, but it also works as a storage unit for glucose, so that glycogen stores in our liver when we're fasting or we need more glucose. Our glycogen stores will break down out of our liver, and we'll use that as energy. Breaks down steroid hormones. So I just talked about estrogen therapy or progesterone, testosterone. It helps to break down hormones. Secretes bile, so that helps with, again, fat absorption and digestion. And then the primary organ for detoxification in the body, we've got 7 different pathways of detoxification. I'm not going to go through all those tonight, but just know there's different pathways that different material can go through to get cleansed out of the liver and out of the body. And again, I don't want to get too much into the biochemistry tonight, but I do want to make a point, and it talks about this in the kits, in the booklets. If you want to get more into detail, you certainly can read that in the kits. But there's 3 phases here. So you've got these, let's just take a pesticide or herbicide, and it's nice and stored away in our liver or in our fat tissue for that matter, and it's just kind of, no one's bothering it, but we still need to get rid of it. So it ends up getting, let's say, you mobilize it and get it pulled up into the liver. What happens at that point is with these kits, with the nutrients that are in here, it's going to take that nice fat soluble toxin that's been behaving itself. You kind of stored it away in your body, and it's going to actually make it more reactive, which sounds like not a good thing. But what it's going to do is, in that reactive state, it's going to make it more water soluble. So there's the phase 2, which is the neutralization phase. It's going to take that fat soluble toxin, make it more water soluble, transform it, convert it, and then get it more water soluble. So then it can exit the liver, go through our GI tract, and either we're going to excrete it or basically pee it out. So we need certain nutrients to do that, and that's what both of these kits provide. So that's really kind of where the magic happens in my mind, is that we've got to take something that's really just kind of hanging out. It's not, again, it's minding its own business. It still shouldn't be in our liver or in our body for that matter, but we still need to get rid of it. It's causing health issues for ourselves. And so we need to get rid of that material. But in order to do that, there's certain nutrients in both of these products that are going to, again, make them, the problem is you've got to water solubilize these agents to get rid of them. And in that process, it does get a little tricky. So we want to do this in proper fashion. We'll get into that in just a minute, so that when we get those more reactive species or toxins in our body, we want to make sure that there's the necessary machinery right after that to clear them out of the body. So, and then phase 3 is, which I just talked about, is elimination. So we're either going to pee them out, excrete them. We need fiber and water to do that, to pull them out of the body. And again, the water is obviously not included, but there's fiber in both of these products to help clear that out. So sometimes it depends on the patient, of course, but if you run into issues with that, sometimes we need to do less fiber depending on the patient's diet, or sometimes more. Or sometimes what we try to do is just balance how much water the patient's taking in to make sure you're going to the bathroom every day. So that's what I'm here for. This is just basically another way to look at this phase 1, phase 2 liver detoxification, where you have a whole set of nutrients. I'll just read through these. So there's phase 1 nutrients. There's B vitamins, folate, vitamins A and D, antioxidants such as vitamin C, vitamin E, milk thistle, calcium, glutathione. Those are all needed to get those toxins from their fat soluble to their intermediate phase, their more water soluble phase. And then to finalize that, you need certain amounts of amino acids to then, I'll call it like a conjugation, essentially, where you're taking that toxin that's more hyperreactive, attaching an amino acid to it, so now it's water soluble, and then the body can flush it out. And so again, that's what both of these products also provide. So you got glycine, taurine, glutamine, cysteine, and then there's some sulfur-based compounds too, which are just helping, again, finalizing that last step and getting the toxins ready for excretion out of the body. So again, we didn't have all of this when I was first introduced to cleanses. Again, it was just more of the fiber laxative type of thing. So if we get these key nutrients into our liver, into our system, now we have the machinery to help clear out those toxins. Then you got your gallbladder, bile, and then excretion. So one thing I will say, I guess I can say that now, is for patients that are constipated, we've got to get that cleared up first before we start doing phase 1, phase 2 liver detox, or basically taking these products. Because if you put a patient on one of these products and they're constipated to begin with, and we haven't fixed that, that's all that's going to back up, and the patient's going to feel horrible, because then those water-soluble toxins are actually going to reabsorb into the body, and they're going to feel awful. It's like a Herxheimer reaction, where they just feel horrendous. Again, within 2 or 3 days, they call me feeling like they've got the flu, like they got hit by a truck. The brain fog is worse, and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that if that's you, let me know. Let's get the constipation issue figured out first, and then we can do a cleanse. So yeah, preparing for the journey. If you have significant deficiencies of vitamins and minerals, we need to know that, and maybe you have no idea. So it's worth, sitting down with me, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, and let's go through what you're taking, both prescription-wise and supplement-wise, so we can address some of those issues. Here's where the coffee and alcohol comes up. As I'm drinking coffee through the seminar. So do what I say, not what I do, right? But with coffee and alcohol, can you have some caffeine or some coffee? Yes, but I want you to titrate down before you do the cleanse, because coffee is a diuretic. It dehydrates us, right? So we want to be as hydrated as we can while we're doing the cleanse. I'm going to, my wife probably doesn't want to hear this right now, but like when she does the cleanse, she still drinks her coffee too. But it might be 1 or 2 cups a day, where literally, like, some days before I leave the house by 7:30, I've gone through a pot of coffee. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then I don't even know how much coffee here at work. It's a lot. Yeah. And I don't even want to talk about my bourbon addiction, so we'll leave that for later. So, elimination diet before detox. So sometimes, like, if patients have like a sugar craving, or they're always eating sweets or something like that, or dairy, and there's wheat, gluten, I want to get you off of those products that are really inflammatory before we again start the cleanse. Because if we do all of this like overnight, you're not going to be, your body's not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy. So some of these things we have to identify. Okay, read through the booklet and you look at that list of what you don't want to be putting in your food, or in your diet meal, what am I trying to say? In your meals every day. Let's say dairy, for example. You're drinking milk every day, or you eat a lot of bread or something like that. I want you to minimize that over a period of time. Each patient's going to be different, but if I can have you cut down your dairy and bread intake over a week or 10 days and then start the cleanse, I'd rather you do that. Or if somebody's addicted to, I get a lot of patients that are drinking Diet Cokes all day long. Okay, we got to cut that out first and then start the cleanse, or minimize it to a point where, I don't want you having, if I were to cut out all my caffeine tomorrow, oh my God, the headache that I'd probably have, I don't even want to think about that. So, and then a 28-day versus a 10-day program. Well, after I get done with my slides, I'll give everyone the questionnaire. Between the 20, and we'll get to this too. There's another. There's also a 14-day program too. But the more toxic you are, the longer you want to do a cleanse. So, and then how do you determine how toxic you are? Well, it's obviously part of it's subjective, of course. We could do blood tests and things like that, but we're not going to get that intricate about it. But there's a questionnaire that you can take that's pretty accurate. Okay, let's rate ourselves on all of these symptoms, and then if you score above a 60, I believe is what it is, or I can't remember the numbers of above. There's different categories. If it's above a 10 in any particular category, then I want you to do the longer cleanse, ideally. So. Diet requirements. What I mean by that is we want to make sure you're getting enough protein as well too. So amino acids are really important. The kit's going to provide some protein and amino acids, but we still want you eating lean meats and things like that during the cleanse. And there's a ton of recipes for that. There's also vegan options too, but we still need protein. You can get a lot of protein from plants. We all know that. And so we just want to make sure you're getting enough protein content so that your body's maintaining its integrity, essentially. And then medications and other supplements, we want to assess that. This list isn't all inclusive and it's hard to read, so this will be nice. You'll have this on the email. There are so many medications. We could spend a whole day talking about this, but there are so many medications out there that deplete. I have a whole program just about drug nutrient depletion. So basically pharmaceutical drug depletion. And there's so many of them. And I see them every single day here because every single patient that comes through the door, they fill out a med intake and I get to see everything that they're on. And then I start to see their health history of what's going on. And it's like, a lot of times it just lines up perfectly. I'm like, well, this drug is causing this problem. And I just go down the list. It's like, if we could at least, sometimes we can't take them off the medication, of course, but I can at least give them the nutrient that their drug is, depleting. So I love antacids. Anyone that's heard me talk about antacids, my PPIs or my omeprazoles of the world, they deplete so many drugs out of the body, so many nutrients out of the body. So it reduces your B12 because you need acidity in your stomach to absorb B12. Well, if you're taking omeprazole or a drug like that, you don't have the acidity anymore in your stomach and you're not going to absorb your B12. So that's a problem. And then you're not going to absorb your magnesium. You're not going to absorb your iron. You're not going to absorb calcium. You need an acidic stomach in general to get those, especially iron. You need acidity in your stomach to get iron absorbed. And then the list goes on. There's zinc is needed. I talked about calcium, folic acid, vitamin D. So if you're on antacids and your vitamin D is low, well, one of the reasons why it might be low or contributing to that is you've been on an antacid for the last 20 years. So we got to start putting those things together. Antibiotics, we touched on that a little bit, but antibiotics can cause B vitamin deficiencies, vitamin K deficiencies. It says calcium, zinc, magnesium, iron. Anti-diabetic drugs can cause CoQ10 depletion, B12, folic acid, and the list goes on. You'll get that email to you. The other one, the big one that I see is statin drugs still. Statin drugs will deplete CoQ10 out of the body. And so either we see if we can lower the dose, put the patient on a different agent, or at the very least, we put them on a CoQ10 supplementation. A lot of times what happens if they're on statin drugs, they'll get that muscle aches and pains or severely rhabdomyolysis. And it's because their body doesn't have enough CoQ10 to properly contract its muscles anymore. So we got to balance out. I think we have to do a better job balancing out drug therapy with some of these nutrient depletions. All right. So SP Detox versus the Core Restore. So that's really what the two that we're offering tonight. So the SP Detox, it has a 10-day or a 28-day program. This is about as simple as it gets as far as a cleanse. So I can't remember exactly what it was. About 2 years ago, I want to say, they took this product, and there used to be 2 or maybe even 3 other capsules that you had to take with it, or products that you had to take with it. It was quite cumbersome, actually. What they did is they basically took those capsules and built it right in. They put it basically into this powder. So all you're doing is making shakes every single day. So I like this one just from its simplicity standpoint. So the 10-day, I'm holding it in my hand. The 28-day, you just get 2 more jugs of this same powder. Super simple that way. It is a pea protein. So not that matters, but that's pea protein. If somebody has a sensitivity or something like that, Then you'd want to do the core restore is brown rice, so there's a difference there. Flavors, you've got unflavored, which is just plain. I don't know which one I grabbed. This one, does it say on here? This might be the plain one. Otherwise, there's a chai. And if I have some open containers, we can sample them tonight too, if you want to just taste them before, just to kind of get a feel for what they taste like. The one caution with the SP Detox, though, because this is solely plant-based, is that this is high in oxalates. So if anyone has a history of kidney stones, you would not want to take the SP Detox cleanse. Like my wife, example, she had, I don't know how many kidney stones a few years ago, removed, I think like 8 kidney stones. Yeah, it was horrendous. It was awful. She calls it the gravel pit that they had to remove out of her. So she definitely does not do that one. And she's on medication to help prevent them from coming back. But so if you know anyone with a history of kidney stones or anything like that, they should not do the SP Detox. They would do the core restore. The core restore, they got a 7, 14, and 28 day. So there's the 7-day kit. You've got a shake that you make with this powder here, and then you've got Alpha Base, which is basically their multivitamin, just kind of prepackaged for the 1 week. And then you've got PhytoCore, which helps with these 2 ingredients, which are built into this powder, but with this, they're separate. This really is the key for the phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification. So this is what's doing the majority of the work on getting those toxins into their more water-soluble format so we can get them out of the body. These actually, they sell, this is just their multivitamin that's sold individually by Ortho, and then they actually sell PhytoCore just by itself too. Like I'll have patients after they do the cleanse, they just want to kind of do let's just call it a general maintenance, and they have the PhytoCore just by itself that helps just keep their liver kind of in tip-top shape, if you will. So that's that. And again, that's the core restore is a rice protein. They have vanilla and chocolate. Before they reformulated the flavoring, they're both not very palatable. But since they've done their reformulation, they're actually really, really good. And if I have samples, I'll get to try those tonight. So here's what's in the SP Detox. So they've got, and this all comes from their farm. Has anyone been to their farm out in Palmyra? No. I was out there 2 years ago. It's absolutely amazing. Like the soil out there is just, it's black. Like I worked on a dairy farm and picked rocks out of cornfields for 3 years, and all the soil is just brown, and it's just not, it's dirt is what we say. It's not soil. Soil should be alive, right? And just the soil out there on their farm is absolutely amazing. It's just, to me, it's breathtaking.
How does it get like that?
Well, they don't put pesticides and herbicides on it. They do cover crops, and that's about as best as I could tell you. But yeah, they really take care of their soil. It's amazing. Yeah. So yellow pea protein, they have flax meal, sweet potato, oats, pumpkin seed protein, buckwheat, carrots, Spanish black radish, apple pectin. So this apple pectin, or just pectin in general, it comes from the rind. And pectin's got a unique property to it. They actually used it in, what am I trying to think of? In Chernobyl with the nuclear meltdown. Because it helps pull out radioactive isotopes out of the body too. And the apple pectin is absolutely amazing for pulling nasty material, I'll put it that way, out of the body. You can just get apple pectin by itself to be very protective of pulling out even like polysorbate 80 and different, how do I say this cautiously, any materials that would be injected into your body that you don't want to get, and you want them pulled out, apple pectin would be the way to go. Yeah. So if you know what I'm getting at there. Speaking of like food sensitivities, things like that, my daughter's allergic to pumpkin seeds. She did a food allergy test, or I shouldn't say allergy, food sensitivity test, IgG, and it came back pumpkin seeds was one of her or sensitivities. I keep calling it an allergen, but lo and behold, well, she didn't eat much pumpkin seeds to begin with, but the other two things that she was sensitive to was wheat and eggs. We got those two things out of her diet, and her migraines are completely gone. So, so that's two. If you're reacting to foods too, we have a food sensitivity kit now that not cheap. It's for 132 foods. It's like $375, and then they do 100. There's a company out that we partnered with out on the East Coast, but then they do 176 foods for $475. But it's very obviously very comprehensive, and you can find out just different things, like if you're reacting to foods or if you have migraines or headaches and things like that. It's nice to get those things pulled out of your diet too, of course, because then you're not constantly inflamed or you have constant fatigue or whatever it might be. So that kind of that. Yep. And then here's the core support powder. This is again, this is the brown rice, but 15 grams of protein per serving, 5 grams of fiber. Again, so there's ingredients in here too that support phase 2 pathway, but it's mainly that phytocore that I showed you earlier. Increases cellular energy, so on and so forth. So it's definitely, they're both very comparable in my book. One's just, I would just say from a plant-based, this is more whole food based, where this would be a little bit more synthetic. Difference. I think that's it. That's pretty quick. Yeah. I'm going to pause or cut the live feed, so to speak, and then I'm going to see if I have some samples we can try. So let me pause this.